Hi Heidi, welcome. So thank you for joining us today. It can be really difficult at this time of year, and I think really poignant leading up to Christmas to talk about mental health and that in relation to money. So we've asked you to join us today just to talk through some of the ways that people can probably manage that additional stress or pressure around this time of year. So I think firstly, please can you just introduce yourself?
So hello, thanks for having me along. So as you might already know, my name is Heidi. I may have met some of you in some of the training that I've done with Phosco as well. So my name is Heidi. I'm the co-founder and, it sounds very exciting, executive director of Ripple's Wellbeing. My background is in senior management and kind of senior leadership team within the world of sport, professional sport. But I now co-own with James Hall a mental health business, which is very, very diverse. Everything from, we have a team now of 12 counsellors, and we offer workplace counselling, individual counselling, counselling for communities and group support sessions. And we also offer mental health first aid training, managers training and bespoke training, where I come into a company and someone will say, we want this specific training in and around mental health. And I also do speaking events where I do lots of things. I come in and talk about a specific subject. So I'll get told, could you come and speak about this? Or I come and share my story and my journey and the journey of Ripples. So that's it's not very short, but that's who I am. And yeah, so that's me. And I'm based in Portishead, which is just on the outskirts of Bristol.
Great. So in your experience, what do you think are the biggest contributors to stress and anxiety in relation to money?
I think the list is endless. When I was preparing for this and having a think about it, I was thinking I could just list so many things. And I think in the current climate, we're living in a very, very difficult place. There is a lot more social pressures than any other and when I say generations before, I mean kind of it's probably easier to say periods of time. And I think, you know, my parents, that when there was different pressures, I think, and our pressure, you know, in our kind of in the current world as we sit right now, is there's a lot of peer pressure. There's a lot of keeping up with the Joneses, as the phrase would be, you know, keeping up with your peers, whether that's work, whether that's friends, whether that's people you know outside of work. Also social media, I know we talk about it a lot. Social media, I'm not someone who harps on about that it's awful and a terrible place to be. I scroll on Instagram as much as the next person, but it also means that you end up comparing yourself to other people a lot. And I think that can create a lot of stress and anxiety, particularly if you're in a place where money is a little bit tighter or is a problem, and you see other people, namely when you're leading up to Christmas, with all, you know, opening the door on Christmas Day, and there's, you know, and if you have children or loved ones and all these big grand gifts and holiday trips and things like that. But, you know, I think there's a lot of pressure. I think at the moment, I was looking at some statistics actually, and about 46% of people who have who are experiencing, quite open in experiencing problems with money, also have a mental health problem that's attached to it. So they may have pre-debt, as we all know, we all have fluctuations in mental health, but didn't have or weren't diagnosed with having a mental health problem or a condition previous to actually being really open about having debt. But actually the debt has now created or kind of brought their mental health into a place of depression, stress, anxiety. And I think the danger that we find ourselves in is it's a snowball effect. And actually, you know, I use a few different phrases, you know, without coining too many, but, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back. You can find yourself just about okay, and then Christmas will come along and that's the last thing, and actually that just tips you over. Or some of you may have heard of a stress bucket, where essentially you kind of imagine yourself as a kind of container, and life puts stress in your bucket. So that can be all sorts of things. Can be work, can be friends, can be physical illness, loved ones, and money goes in there as well. And what happens is, you know, the stress goes into the bucket, and actually what happens is it just keeps going in and keeps going in. And I think Christmas can just be another thing that gets added into the bucket that takes it over and means that all that stress overflows into everything else that's happening in life. And I think the other thing that it contributes towards is that if you're experiencing financial difficulty, it can also mean that you can't take care of the things that keep you well. So, you know, the first thing we think of is hobbies and holidays, but actually I'm fundamentally talking about things like food and housing and heating and things like that. And actually, it's not just the niceties that keep us well and are really, really important, but actually it's also some of the, you know, our fundamentals that we need that actually it can really snowball and start affecting as well.
With that in mind, can you recommend any sort of techniques people can use to try and manage those feelings that they get, and especially at this time of year and as the nights sort of get darker and sort of leading up to that, what we see is it can potentially be a bit more of a pressured situation leading up to Christmas. How people can sort of deal with that in relation to money?
Yeah, so I think I think one of the biggest things, and you know, I kind of draw on this. You're a mental health first aider. CU Phosco have a really, really, you know, really good big group of mental health first aiders. If you find yourself, and you can talk to one of those, or a friend, or a loved one, or someone totally independent, one of the best techniques is just to talk about it. I think the more that we bottle it up inside, I think the danger is, though, when it comes to money, people can feel a lot of shame and a lot of embarrassment and a lot of guilt actually comes into there. And what it means is that we come from a society where we don't really talk about money. And actually the only time we talk about money is if we are in a situation where we feel like we have a lot of money. So we can be quite open and kind of flamboyant with it. And actually, I think it is a challenge in society at the moment. I think actually if we can navigate ourselves, same as mental health, you know, the same as you encourage and see Phosco encourage and I encourage people to talk about, as much as you are like, do you know what, yeah, I'm having a really good day today, this is brilliant, you know, I feel energetic, I feel optimistic, I feel all of these things. It's equally important on the days where you're not feeling okay to go, do you know what, actually today I'm not doing great. And that's the same with money. You know, it's equally as important to go, do you know what, actually I'm a bit worried about Christmas, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do. So some of the techniques, I think it is equally more difficult when it's dark in the mornings, dark in the evening, particularly if money or financial challenges mean that you actually, again, you maybe can't socialize as much as you would like to. And so you can feel even more isolated. So I think one of the key things is so what I talk about a lot is that I talk about as being a holistic kind of a whole person. So there's your physical health. So it's really, really important to take care of your physical health when you're experiencing stress and anxiety. Now, yoga is brilliant and wonderful. Yoga's not for everyone. Go for a walk. Even if you don't actually want to walk very far, actually just connecting yourself to nature, getting outside, getting some fresh air. In the rain, sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge, but it does wonders for you. I also talk about two specific techniques that I think are really, really good is it's actually, if anybody's watching SAS, Celebrity Are You Tough Enough at the moment? I think that's what the program's called. One of the instructors on there talks about a really brilliant technique. And what that is about listing out everything that you're concerned about. So obviously at the moment we're talking about financial challenges. And how that relates to stress and anxiety. So that might not be the only thing actually that you're stressed and anxious about. It's just the final thing, because this time of year Christmas is present. And what you do is you list everything out, and actually that in itself can be can have a really, really good effect. It's quite cathartic to get it out onto a list. The challenge is then when you look at a very long list, it can feel really overwhelming, and you can sit there and think, brilliant, it's now out of my head, but now I don't even know where to start. And one of the techniques that one of the instructors on the SAS program talks about in a podcast is how you cross out the things that are out of your control. So start off by going, that's out of my control. I can't control that thing. I might be worried about it. Doesn't mean I'm not gonna, by crossing it off, it doesn't suddenly mean that worry just evaporates out like a wisp of smoke. But what it does mean is then your list might go from 30 to 10. And actually then you go, right, I now focus on these 10. What can I actually do about these 10? And no matter how small the thing is that you can do, it makes a difference. The other thing, which I think is sometimes harder to do, is to try and find gratitude, I think. And it's very, very challenging when you're stressed and anxious, because it's like a tumbleweed and it keeps growing and growing and growing. But actually, if you can stop yourself, and actually, I think in the evening when it is a bit darker and you can feel a bit gloomy, the weather starts affecting you, all of those things, actually to take time in the evening and just think, what am I grateful for? What's happened today that I'm grateful for? And that can be really, really simple. Like, I had a really good meeting at work. I actually managed to walk my dog. I ate healthily today. I drank my all the water that I need to do today, whatever it, and it can be really, really simple. And I think what that does is that pulls us out of that kind of stress state into kind of more of a present state, which I think can sometimes be happy. It's not an easy thing to do, but it can help.
So I think really talking about that list from the podcast, and then equally talking about the gratitude list, it sounds a lot like a really good method is actually changing your mindset around that and your approach to financial situation. Do you think that's sort of where we're at, where you think is a good way to start?
Yeah, I think it is. And I think financial worries, as I said, we live in a society where we don't like talking about it. It's that embarrassment and that shame makes us think we can't talk about it, especially quite often to the people that are closest to us, because there's a two-way part of that, which is you don't want them to worry about you, but also it's the shame and the embarrassment attached to it. So I think mindset is key. And I think the fear and the embarrassment and the shame often comes from when we don't understand it. And actually, I think one of the key messages I can say in terms of kind of stress and anxiety is to learn to be a little bit kind to yourself. And it's really hard, but actually, if you can learn to just be a little bit gentle with yourself and, let go of mistakes. Sometimes the situation you might find yourself in now is because something happened, and it happened. And, especially if you are someone who is anxious and who naturally is stressed, or just at this period in your life, you hold mistakes and you hold on to them really, really tightly. And you think, well, if actually I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be in this place. I wouldn't be in this debt. I wouldn't be worrying about Christmas. How am I going to afford it? And I think the mindset of trying to allow yourself to accept the fact that life happens, actually, and we can't change it. What we can do is kind of go, do you know what? That is what's happened. Now, what can I do about it? And I think one of the key things when it comes to money is facing challenges. So kind of facing it and saying, do you know what? Christmas is coming. Okay, I'm struggling already. Christmas is coming. Okay, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to manage this period where I can still enjoy it if it's a festive period that is part of my life and my culture, and to not really bury it. And I think acknowledging the fact that actually you're in control of it as well, because sometimes finances can feel like you're here and finances are out here, and somehow you think, well, I can't do anything about it because it's not I can't magic money up and things like that. But actually you can control it more than you probably think. And I think lastly, which I think we talk about a lot, I talk about a lot in all sorts of things, and I know you talk about it as well, is seeking out that additional knowledge and support. I'm not a financial expert, I'm not at all. However, I have gone onto websites, I have this, I don't understand it, what does this mean? And I think there are some brilliant resources out there that you can turn to for help.
So I think really the last thing is, can you signpost anyone to any helpful resources to be able to manage or get advice about their finances?
Yeah, so when you come, yes, so yeah, there are definitely places. So I think some of these are, so as an example, I have as a resource that we recommend at Ripple's Wellbeing. So one of those that's really, really good it's called moneyadvicetrust.org. So they're a charity So I'm a massive believer in orientating people towards places that don't have affiliations, that aren't affiliated to companies or products or otherwise. Now, they're a charity, which means that their pure and simple function is to support you through that situation that you're in. So I think that's a really, really good one. Another really, really good charity is quite specific, so definitely is not for everybody. But if you find yourself in a situation where maybe gambling or addiction is a bit of a problem for you, or another family member, actually it doesn't have to be you, it can be somebody else in your family or your support structure, it's gordonmoody.org.uk. And it's a self-referral. There's brilliant resources on their website, but they're phenomenal. I won't go into too much about what they do, but they're really, really good. Another one as well is moneyhelper.org.uk, and they are endorsed by the government. So they're kind of, if you go on there, you'll see all the government logos and things at the bottom. And they, again, are really wide reaching in terms of what they support you with. So they can support you with a loan, knowledge about a loan, knowledge about a mortgage, knowledge about a credit card, but then also, online shopping or otherwise. So I think those I would really recommend in terms of, and they are resources that from Ripples we talk a lot about. So I would suggest that they're a really good place to start. Equally, if it is, I think you also, it's really important to acknowledge the fact that as much as Christmas and the financial part will be having a part to play, it's also about your mental health as well. And some really brilliant resources. I know CU Phosco have lots of resources that you give out to people and that you openly suggest. Mind is a brilliant website. Samaritans is a really good website. I know lots of people think Samaritans are for a very specific function, but actually they're brilliant. They are so wide reaching in terms of what they offer. Worry Tree is a brilliant app, actually. If you their strapline is that it's an app for worriers made by worriers. So the people who created it are people who live with anxiety and worry. So they've gone, what actually helps me and what really doesn't help me. So that's a really good app. So that's kind of coming out into, there's the financial part, and then there's also the acknowledgement that actually, seeking out help for your mental health in addition to, or maybe separately, or maybe you feel actually if I get some support for my mental health, this might also help as well. Yeah. So there's just some ideas there for you, which hopefully people find helpful.